Hello there, and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capsule. Michelle, thank you very much for joining me this morning, albeit a bit virtually. But I was on assignment today, so thank God for technology. Indeed, we're still able to have AM Prime. But this morning, my first conversation focuses on the National Security Council. Following the Prime Minister's commentary over the weekend, well, more so actions that followed with the commentary over his role on the National Security Council, another point was raised totally separate to the incident that happened. It actually focuses on Tobago's role on the National Security Council. Suffice it to say, they don't really have a role on the National Security Council. And that was a point that was raised by the political leader of the IDA, Dr. Denise Soifat Angus, and she's with us virtually. Hello, Dr. Angus, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Shah. Good morning to your viewers and listeners across the world. And it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. As I mentioned, Tobago's role on the National Security Council, a point that you have made is that Tobago should be represented on the council, adding that there was a need for local and comprehensive approach to tackling with Tobago's security challenges. That being said, how would Tobago's position on the National Security Council be beneficial to the island? Why do they need to be represented on the National Security Council?
Well, first of all, let us begin looking at the crime rate. You know, Trinidad and Tobago's crime rate is already 30% above the international average. And when you look at it, Tobago having 6 murders for the year already rings an alarm for us in Tobago. We are now entering March. We have already had 6 murders, which are gun-related and unsolved, and coming within close succession of each other. Now, the Chief Secretary and the Legislative Council moved a motion last sitting to form a loosely put together committee of people who would present themselves out of courtesy to able to treat with the crime situation in Tobago. However, we are now seeing from all the news reports that crime in Trinidad and Tobago is of a transnational nature, fueled largely by drugs and guns. So Tobago, the current committee that they suggested to be setting up is not going to go anywhere, because a transnational problem needs a national solution, and Tobago is not responsible or nor has any input into the national security to the National Security Council. And the national security apparatus that we have is driven by the National Security Council, and this is where Tobago needs to be in order to treat with it. Now, you know, one of the challenges we have with that committee, well, a number of challenges. You see, it lacks legal basis. As we said, you know, Tobago is not legally responsible, nor has authority over those arms whether it is the protective services, the coastal, the Coast Guard. There's no authority, and it may even it's definitely not funded. There's no funding for it. There's no sustainable funding for it. And we all know fighting crime takes a large budget. It's going to cause disruptions in our the efficient public service delivery, because they would have to, the public servants will have to be moving monies around for allocations that were not established for this sort of activity. And therefore, it affects the overall resources to the Tobago House of Assembly administration, meaning we'll have even less than what we were given to do in the first place. And so these are the reasons why we state that, you know, we should have a seat on the council.
So I know the focus is on the National Security Council, but I'm glad that you've raised the point in respect to the Safety Committee that the Chief Secretary has stated that is to be put together. That being said, whilst I understand the points that we've raised, are you of the opinion that there are any sort of benefits to the establishment of a safety committee on the island of Tobago, given the situation at this point?
Of course, but it has to be done in the right way. It has to be done such as it forms the official Tobago Security Council. And that could only come from having a seat at the National Security Council, such that at the level of the Tobago Security Council, it already comes with all of the legal framework and the authority to even have this committee, and therefore things would move seamlessly. You would also have the support of the budgetary allocations to ensure that this committee can do its work properly. And there will be a seamlessness in the communication between the National Security Council and the Tobago Security Council. And therefore, you will have the more effective approach and successful approach, not just for an island, but for the country.
Currently, though, are you satisfied with the national security apparatus's response, or well, not even their response, but the measures, whether it be proactive or reactive, that they've implemented to deal with Tobago's security challenges? Because bear in mind, they will focus nationally, but Tobago seems to be the crime rate is getting out of hand.
It is out of hand. And if you begin to compare us with other countries, we may as well be coming second to only Jamaica and Ecuador, and just Tobago alone, with the number of, because what, we have 60,000 people on the island, you have 6 people already murdered. I mean, that murder rate is quite high. And what we want to really look at is to ensure that we deal with, yes, the drugs and the guns that are coming into Tobago. Tobago is also open in terms of our borders. We have seen where they found all this drugs in Tobago's waters after the oil spill. We have had a number of Venezuelan boats in our borders. We have had, the recent tug and boat, the oil spill that we recently had. How did that get into Tobago's waters without being noticed? And previous to that, we had the African ship that showed up with all these dead bodies about 2 years ago, again within Tobago's waters. So clearly, the only evidence we have is that we are not being protected at this point. And there are a number of things that must be looked at, because even though we are the country of Trinidad and Tobago is, you could say Tobago is half the country, that we are divided by water, and we need to start looking at some additional things that can be put in place to protect us from everything that is occurring that could enter our space, whether it is through the airspace or through the sea space. Something has to be done, better has to be done. And that is why we said having a seat at the National Security Council that then gives rise to the official Tobago Security Council with all of the resources at its disposal to fight this situation and to protect ourselves. That is the way that the Innovative Democratic Alliance sees the best way forward for Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago, because many Trinidadians come to Tobago for vacation, for business. So we're not just protecting Tobagonians, we're protecting the whole country when we do when we take this step forward.
So you're making arguments, and arguments exist, that this is a matter that should be treated with urgency. However, it will also require some sort of provision of the Constitution. And as we are aware, that does take some time. Given that, and given a history when it comes to revising our constitution, is there some other way that some arrangement can be made informally at this point until it is stipulated to, well, it's stated Tobago's position on the National Security Council?
Yes, well, first of all, we are at an opportune time right now because the Constitution is being reviewed. The Prime Minister just created a committee to review the constitution of the country right now. So therefore, it is an opportune time for them to deal with it there. But in the immediate, what should have happened at the last plenary debate is that the House there should have debated Tobago having this seat at the National Security Council, making official representation through a legislative position from Tobago and making that representation to the Prime Minister. And in the same way that it seems that the Prime Minister could have just disbanded the official head that he had there, I forgot his name, and brought in Mr. Spencer, yes, to replace him.
Yeah, that was Mr. Best, yes.
Without going through the parliament, just a missive that goes to the president. It's the same way that they can create a position right now where perhaps they have Tobago featured on the agenda and a representative from Tobago, again, chosen through the House, the Assembly legislature, not just picked by a chief secretary, but chosen through the, a debate process. That person is sent to sit at the National Security Council for the Tobago agenda part of that activity. Additionally, when that is done, subsequent to that, you then work on it being a part of the Constitution, because it has to go past whether an administration wants to have Tobago sit there or not, whether administration can work with the chief secretary or not. It has to be something constitutionally protected, such that no matter who sits at the helm in Trinidad or in Tobago, that this is the way forward for Trinidad and Tobago where crime fighting is concerned.
I'm glad you raised that point. That actually leads me to my next question. One of the issues that you're looking at, one of the challenges to this actually coming to fruition is it seems as though the conflicts between the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary in Tobago, and oftentimes it seems to be very much unwarranted, where politics gets in the way of what is oftentimes seems as best. But what it seems as best is also debatable. That being said, these unwarranted conflicts, how do you even get past this hurdle to even finding a solution? It was good seeing the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary in Tobago in response to the oil spill. But then a couple of days later, there was conflict as well over accusations of hiding information. So it's a back and forth. It's not going to prove to be fruitful in any way.
I totally agree with you with that. And that is why the IDA believes that this current administration, the Chief Secretary, is unable to facilitate this conversation at the national level. A conversation that is absolutely necessary for us to go forward in being proactive. And that is why the IDA is taking it forward. In fact, we intend to be writing the Prime Minister today on this issue because we realize that the current administration, given the public conflict that continues between them, that there is no way that either one will reach out to the other unless it is a crisis. And that cannot be the way forward for Tobago, because it hinders our progress. And it doesn't just hinder our progress in Tobago, it hinders the progress of the country, because Tobago's progress is part of the country's progress.
But do you expect a response from the Prime Minister?
Of course, I am a resident of Tobago. I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. I have written a letter to the Prime Minister who has been nurtured by Tobago in coming up, who has lost close friends to this whole issue of murders in Tobago. And I am writing this letter on behalf of Tobago, a plea, and I would expect that the Prime Minister would respond to a concerned constituent.
And if he does not respond, what is next?
Well, that will be left up to the people of Tobago to decide. Are they considered worthy in the eyes of the Prime Minister to be, to champion their safety by having this meeting with all of the leaders to see where Tobago needs to go, what is the best way forward in protecting the lives of the people on this island, and by extension, all the visitors that come from everywhere, including Trinidad.
Now, you're making an argument for Tobago to return to the paradise that we once knew it. You even stated that the stakeholders are to prioritize safety and security of Tobago in a united effort forward. Now, when you refer to stakeholders, I will agree that it's definitely the Tobago House of Assembly and the residents on the island of Tobago. That being said, whom do you suppose are other stakeholders and are seen as integral in this fight for Tobago security challenges?
Well, let me tell you, the responsibility of crime belongs to everyone. And so while we advocate for the seat at the National Security Council, that then gives rise to an official Tobago Security Council, we then have to have a network of private security businesses, fisher folk, the general citizenry in the tech, using the technology to detect and prevent crime on the island. Additionally, reinstating the community-based policing in Tobago would be a way forward. I think when that was done some years ago, we did see a positive impact from there. But additionally, the Tobago House of Assembly has its work to do in terms of creating youth at risk intervention programs and primarily having an overhaul of the education system. In fact, if that is done in Trinidad too, you may even see the decrease there. But we're beginning in Tobago, and we should see an overhaul of an education system that makes it more relevant to every child that goes to the school. It cannot just be based on academia. It is time that we place emphasis on technology, technical, vocational, art.
Ooh, Dr. Sorry, but Angus, it seems as though we've lost you there. It seems as though the line has gone down. Are you still with us?
And sports. These are all.
Dr. Sorry, Angus, I'm sorry, we've lost you. Or at least
I am still with you.
Okay.
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you. It seems as though the
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. It just seems as though the connection is a bit it's a bit bad. But I do take your last point. Yes, we heard most of the last point. But Dr. Sorry, Angus, we're gonna end it there for now. Because this conversation actually extends further. But also given the time, I want to thank you very much for joining me on AM Prime this morning. And for the point that you raised with respect to Tobago's role on the National Security Council. So, following your letter to the Prime Minister, the ID's letter to the Prime Minister, let's see what comes out of that. And it certainly needs further conversation. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Dr. Denise Evan Angus, the political leader of the Innovative Democratic Alliance, joining me on our AM Prime this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
In the studio now, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
The Constitution doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia that's responsible for looting the country and they own and operate these politicians.
So if you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
You'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man is being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Continuing with the conversations this morning, focusing on another matter of national security. What is happening within our school system? Now, this is the second time in a matter of 1 year that we've seen a bomb scare taking place. This one affecting 49 primary schools in the southeastern districts of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the Minister of Education has responded in Parliament yesterday, saying that an investigation is underway. That's being led by the Bomb Squad unit, as well as the Cybersecurity unit of the TTPS. The president of Tutor, following a call of an investigation, also noted that there are 49 schools in the southeastern district. When information reached them, they were told that the 9 schools during that period on Tuesday actually saw some response from the fire services. 4 were actually given clearance for students and teachers to return to the building. But this is just one part of a problem affecting schools in TNT. We heard of a shooting incident outside of a school 2 weeks ago. We've also heard of severe school fights. And when I say severe, I suppose that's putting it very lightly. So all in all, there's so many things with respect to the school system that is giving us all a bit of a headache, and parents, teachers alike are very concerned. So I'm joined by the president of Tutor this morning, Mr. Martin Lumpkin, and he is with us virtually. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Shah. Good morning to your viewers, listeners.
Well, you are a very busy man. Tutor has been very busy within recent times. Thanks so much for joining us. I know all that has been said following this bomb scare that happened on Tuesday. We understand that an investigation is underway, but is your membership, are teachers actually feeling safe? Whilst they are actually carrying out their duties, do they feel safe whilst carrying out their duties and responsibilities within the school systems here in TNT?
Generally, our teachers, are relatively safe. And I say relatively because in different areas you would have safety being a concern, and in some areas it is less of a concern because of the resources placed upon them. But by and large, Tutor is not satisfied with the security in schools. We are not satisfied with what the Ministry of Education, as well as the other agencies, are doing right now to ensure that the occupants of our schools are safe. We are further incensed by the fact that the Ministry of Education has been eroding the authorities of the principals of schools. They seem to be micromanaging our schools. So in the case of the bomb scare in the Southeastern District, the 49 schools, granted that the authorities, which is either the bomb squad of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, TTPS, or the fire service, has to give clearance for reoccupation of the school's building. We can appreciate, because of the stretched resources of both agencies, as well as the wide geographic area of Southeastern, schools are located kilometers apart. And so it was not feasible, it was not possible for both agencies to cover these schools. We can report that while visiting one of the schools, the fire service was called out to a fire. So, they have to attend to that and then go back to the schools. So while that is happening, the schools principals, as well as the crisis management team, would have been activated and the relevant evacuation would have taken place. So the procedures were followed by our members and they assembled at the muster point. Now, these muster points, you can appreciate, would be in open areas. It's not shaded at any point. Some may be under some trees and so, but generally, by and large, the occupants of the compound, and you're speaking about 5, 6-year-olds up until 11, 12, 13-year-olds, as well as our members, our educators, being in that hot sun for hours upon end, and not getting any relief because they cannot go back into the compound. And the principals were given from their line supervisor, from the SS2, they were given they were told not to dismiss school until they get permission from the Ministry of Education. So persons in their, what we call ivory tower, their air-conditioned offices, are dictating to our principals who are there on the plant and experiencing and would be, the ones that can make the decision at the point. We have contended to the Ministry of Education and the Public under Section 27 of the Education Act, as well as the job description of the principals, give them the authority to make decision when it comes to the safety of the occupants. And we have been seeing a creeping issue of the Ministry of Education attempting to circumvent and diminish the authority of the principals.
So I know that is a point that you raised, and a point also that was raised in Parliament yesterday in respect to the authority of the principals. I just want to touch on the point of the existing health and safety protocols, the safety protocols that are in place. Are they up to standard given the current issues associated with the day-to-day school system? There are issues of violence all the time. There is another bomb scare. This is the second in the last year. Are the existing safety protocols satisfactory or in aligned with the reality that we are facing currently?
The existing protocols as established by the Ministry of Education and then filtered down to the school. So the schools will take the general policy and fit it towards their context. And by and large, it is up to a minimum standard. However, there always the need to revise and revisit these policies because situation changes. So we were informed, one of the principals informed us that a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, TTPS, informed them that during the bomb scare, which is different to a fire evacuation or earthquake drills and so on. Generally, we would say on an evacuation, you do not take up any of your possessions. You evacuate as quickly as you can. The teachers take their roll book in order to do a check and to account for all the students. However, the TTPS is saying for a bomb scare, persons should take their possessions. This would eliminate any unusual bag, package, and so. So it helps to eliminate the, so in the investigation and the sweeping would be confined to what is out of place, what is not supposed to be there. Because if they have all of these possessions as well, they have to go through them. So the students' bags, all of those things would have to be sifted through. But if the students and the teachers take up their bags, and they know what is in content of their bag, then it then eliminates what remains. So what is out of place, then they can check, and it makes it quite easier for them. So these things have to be looked at carefully in terms of, so different situations would require different forms of evacuation or crisis management.
I get what you're saying, but that seems very it doesn't seem constructive at all when it comes to security. The first thing is to try and get individuals out of the building as quickly, but as safely as possible. Having for them to now actually take their possessions and belongings seems very much not proactive at all in dealing with the situation. I get the TTPS having to sweep through the school, but at the same time, you never fully know the contents that are in these bags. I'm not saying that a student is going to walk, a primary school student is going to walk with a bomb or device to school, but at the same time, you can never know what's been slipped into any one of those bags.
And that's a valid point. And in reflecting on it, the authorities, and if you look at sometimes in other jurisdictions, they have dogs which can detect bombs. So even if you have all of those implements remaining, the dogs can detect it. So that is a discussion that the ministry would have to have with the TTPS and the fire service in event that they need to update the procedure. But it was suggested by a member of the TTPS that in the case of a bomb scare, that this protocol should be followed. It is not implemented, it is not instituted, but that was a suggestion that was made. But if and we understand the under-resourcing of the both authorities, but if they look at they have a bomb detection unit, then they should have the relevant resources. So sniffer dogs should be, a part of it.
Speaking about the TTPS, there was a call on the part of tutor for increased police presence and patrols at various schools across TNT. The TTPS has indicated they have agreed to such. However, they've also raised the issue of resources. Officers cannot be present all the time throughout schools. In that regard, focus has also been placed on school safety officers. We understand that there are issues surrounding their contracts.
Yes.
Is there a shortage of school safety officers? Is the presence of one MTS officer on these school compounds sufficient?
And the answer to that is, the simple answer is no. All right, so in the instance of the presence of TTPS officers, we can report that in East Port of Spain, I think it was the assistant, is DCP, I think. Well, one of the hierarchy of the TTPS did meet with the principals of East Port of Spain and would have assured the principals that there will be a presence of police officers, I believe 6 to 9 and 2 to 4. So that's, just before the start of school hours to the end of school hours as well. There will be mobile patrols. The principals were calling for static patrols because it was reported that just before the person was shot outside of Gloucester Lodge Moravian School, there was a TTPS patrol passed just before. So they are calling for static patrols, the presence of officers, which the person did say they would attempt to, but they would have to apply for officers outside of their jurisdiction to get them to be present. Now, we are saying that in instances like this, our experience has been there will be a presence, and then after a while, when the whole hype of it has died down, then the officers are removed because naturally they have other duties and they are understaffed as well too. But there is a wider problem of violence and indiscipline, not only in schools, but in the public, which needs to be addressed. And we need to seriously have not just only discussions, but actions. We are good at discussing things. We are good at coming up with solutions. It is the enactment of those solutions that are sometimes the problem in our society. And we are treating with symptoms and not getting to the root cause of the violence and indiscipline. Coming back to school safety and health officers, contracts are a big problem. Ministry of Education has not been renewing those persons' contract on time. And so in some of the larger schools, you're supposed to have 2 officers. Sometimes they have 1. Sometimes if you have 2, they transfer 1 from the school that has 2 for the school that doesn't have any. Quite recently, we've been informed that the ministry have been transferring these officers in a very ad hoc manner. So in the morning, they report for duty. A safety officer would get a letter of transfer, immediate transfer to another school. Now, one of the duties of the school safety officer is to get to know the students of the school, because part of actually counseling or even administering safety, and so you have to know who the students are, what they're capable of, what are their issues sometimes. So when you move them around, that whole learning has to now take place. And that during that period, it can cause some unease on the parts of the principals. And this is one of the issues as well too. We're not having enough of the safety officers at schools, and the renewal of contract is not timely. as well as the removal of such. The issue of school security on the compound is a problem. At the majority, if not all of the primary schools, there's one security guard to manage our entire compound. Now, part of the duties of the security guard is to make patrols. So when that officer has to make a patrol at the back of the school, what happens to the front? It's unguarded. You can lock the gate. However, it's still unmanned, and there is a possibility of a breach of security. So we are saying to the Ministry of Education, there should be at least 2 at the primary schools. Some secondary would have 3, 4, depending on the size. But guess what? If a security officer does not report for duty in another school, say a primary school, they take a security guard from that complement in order to send to the primary school. So you have that almost on a daily basis. So the complement of the security guards at the secondary schools are diminished and depleted. Sometimes 2 have to go. And sometimes the schools don't even have the complement of security officers. And this causes a serious security risk. We also have to look at the duties of the security guard. In some instances, they are saying they are there to protect the plant and to protect the buildings, not to protect the occupants. In some, they do it. So that standard has to be set. And the Ministry of Education, who is the employer of the security firms, because it's not only MTS, there are other firms, have to make sure that the duties of the security guards are clearly spelled out, such that it can lead to assisting the schools. But this is just in the short term. We have to look at long term as well too. So there are other areas. So we're supposed to have deans of discipline in the secondary schools. We don't have the complements of deans of discipline. So there isn't that added resources and complement to the security and dealing with security. So you have guidance counselors, but they are in clusters of schools. They are not assigned to a school, one school, and they're not there every day. Now, the issue of guidance counselors as opposed to counselors who can do psychological evaluation and thereby prescribe how we can treat with some of the issues of these children. That is another issue that we need to face as well. Psychosocial workers. We have social workers as well, but not the full complement. And then with the issue of security, they are supposed to visit homes to those who are not attending and those who have problems. But that is as well a security risk for them. So Ministry of Education has this division called Student Support Services Division. So you have social workers, you have guidance, and you have special ed, but they are understaffed and under-resourced. It is a unit that can lend support to the schools, but over the years, they have been starved of resources as well as of human resource and manpower. So all of these things coupled together is a time bomb just waiting to explode because we are not dealing with the source of the problem. We are only treating symptoms.
Mr. Lumpkin, I also am aware that there was an issue regarding a shortage of teachers and even issues surrounding the hiring of teachers. But based upon what you said, the answer seems to be in plain sight. But, I'd like to hear from you directly. It comes across as though the school system here in TNT is broken down. It's not a matter that it's breaking down, it is broken down.
In some instances and in some quarters, and if it depends on how you view it, we can come to that conclusion. Now, all is not lost. The Ministry of Education, we give kudos when necessary. They have been trying. They are also facing financial situations. However, we are saying that as a responsible government, although the Ministry of Education has been given the lion's share of the budget, there's still not enough for that they are doing. And so, yes, it can be viewed in that instance because you also have infrastructural issues plaguing a number of schools. Schools are aging, and at this present time, the ministry is only facing on critical infrastructural works. But there are those that are creeping, and sometimes not even creeping, running in terms of infrastructural issues. And they are waiting for something critical to happen to attend to. So yes, the entire system needs to be revamped. We have to have serious conversation. Sometimes it's good to just step back, view what is going on, have consultation, and when we say consultation, meaningful consultation, not just window dressings, not just saying consultation for the sake of consultation, but when you have consultation, you have meaningful dialogue, and when we come to decisions, we have to enact the decisions. Even if it is incrementally, we start with those that are low-hanging fruits, and we go forward with it. But the fact of the matter is a number of schools are short-staffed at this time. We can only speculate the reason. Now, the Teaching Service Commission is the body responsible for hiring, firing, promoting, etc. Now, Teaching Service Commission has been stating that they are doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And we believe that autonomous body that is shielded from the political influence of, and you know, in Trinidad and Tobago, political influence is quite common and quite easy, because we can argue that the members of the TSC is appointed by the president. But who appoints the president? It is the government of the day. Yeah? So by that you can argue that the TSC is also a political creature, because they are appointed. The same thing with members of the industrial court. And these things have to be looked at very carefully. However, we still believe that the hiring, promotion, firing of our members of the teaching service has to be insulated from and has to be guarded from political influence, because politicians, by and large, majority of them, only look to satisfy their political needs and do what is politically expedient. We have allegedly gotten word of politicians, ministers, trying to leapfrog the order of merit list to have their persons appointed before others. And, you know, those are things we are trying to get away. But the Teaching Service Commission has not been, they are in a backlog of appointing teachers for promotion to higher offices. There's a backlog, and that is crippling the system right now. You can imagine a principal having to deal with the administration of a school and yet still teach a class. And these are the realities that our members are facing. Sometimes you're short by 2, 3. So we kind of wonder why this is happening, what is really going on with this. And if you don't have teachers to supervise children, then you know, especially the younger ones, can get into areas of mischief that you don't want them to. When there's the breaks, the lunch breaks, the recess breaks, and so the supervision of these children are also critical, because you don't want any one of them being injured. However, if you are short-staffed, and if staff is not content, then it's highly likely they're not going to volunteer, because some of these actions are voluntary. Supervision during the lunch period, because they have their lunch as well too.
I'm sorry to interject. We are running out of time, but the last thing I want to ask you very quickly is that, given all that you said, and you've indicated, you know, we'll give the ministry kudos where kudos is due, but you've also indicated that politics is eroding the system, or seems to be eroding the system. If that be the case, that politics is eroding the efficiency of these systems, you have no choice but to communicate with the Minister of Education. I'm not advocating for otherwise. But do you think that is beneficial in doing so if politics seems to be trumping everything else?
We have to continue to utilize whatever means we have. and communicating with the Minister of Education, whoever is the Minister of Education, as the head of the recognized majority union, we have to do it at times. We have no other choice. And yes, we are aware of the political influences. However, we are still hopeful, and we are always hopeful that the minister will enact policies that is in the best interest of the education system. So by and large, this minister, whenever we reach out, we would get response. By and large, we get that. Other ministers of education as well. And I want to say tutor does not get involved in party politics. So when other unions and so on come out politically and say certain things, tutor does not, because we reserve the right to work with any government, but to criticize any government as well too. And our members are free to align to any political party. The association would not. But by and large, when we reach out to most ministers in the past, then we would get response. Sometimes it's slow in coming, but generally we do. But we have to. That's one of the duties that we have as the association. We have to not only reach out to Minister of Education, sometimes other ministers to assist in getting things done.
Well, given how busy you have been, thank you very much for making the time this morning to have the conversation. And thank you for the extensive conversation as well, Mr. Lumpkin. All the very best to you.
Same to you, and thank you. And apologies again for the mix-up last week.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Thank you again, and all the best.
All the very best.
Thank you.
President Tutor Martin Lumpkin joining me on AM Prime this morning. I'm glad we've had this conversation. We were actually going to focus on as to whether or not parents should be held responsible for the actions of their children. That was the initial topic. But given all that has unfolded within the last few weeks, I'm glad we were able to have this extensive conversation with the issues within the school systems. And there are so many, even the contracts of school safety officers. Sometimes guards not being showing up for duty for whatever reason. We understand at times it's not always their fault. Circumstances will see them having to not show up for duty at times. But then we're shifting resources because of a shortage. The issues of teachers not being hired and a shortage of teaching staff. The politics on the outside that is affecting the inside. It's, ladies and gentlemen, it's really, really amazing how we can still say that our school system is fine. Let's take a break on AM Prime.
Here is WESN's News on the Hour. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Prime Minister criticizes opposition's priorities amid anti-crime concerns. Claxton Bay man in court for 2 separate murders. Massey Women's Caribbean Premier League sets record viewer numbers in 2023. And regionally, Venezuela sets presidential election date for July 28th. Now for the details. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has voiced criticism against the United National Congress for its perceived lack of engagement with the government on crucial anti-crime strategies. Speaking at the Skiffle Bunch Pan Theatre in San Fernando during his Conversations with the Prime Minister series, Dr. Rowley expressed frustration over the absence of discussions with the UNC while highlighting their recent meeting with St. Lucia's opposition leader Alan Chastanet, whom he referred to as Tropical Trump.
But they're sitting down with Chastanet as if St. Lucia, who had Chastanet in their government to run their country, threw him out of office unceremoniously, but in Trinidad to try to tell us how to run Trinidad. No thanks, Tropical Trump. But it just shows you where some people's interests are.
A Claxton Bay man has appeared in court charged with 2 murders arising out of separate incidents which occurred in November 2023 and February 2024. Mark Nelson, aka West, 33, was charged with the murders of Lyndon Marcus, which occurred in Claxton Bay on November the 7th, and Luca Goring, which occurred in Gasparilla on February the 16th. Mark Nelson appeared before Master Shah in the San Fernando High Court on Monday the 4th of March 2024. The matters will next be heard on July 26th. The Massey Women's Caribbean Premier League, WCPL, made waves in 2023 by shattering previous viewership records. The tournament, which expanded to include matches in Barbados and Trinidad, attracted a staggering 36.2 million viewers across broadcast and digital platforms. This surge in viewership marked a remarkable 45% increase from the previous year, highlighting the growing global interest in women's cricket and the WCPL specifically. The 7-match tournament culminated in an intense final at the Brian Lara Cricket Academy, where the Barbados Royals triumphed over the Guyana Amazon Warriors to claim the coveted title. Notably, the final match emerged as the most watched event of the tournament. Chief Executive Officer of the CPL, Pete Russell, emphasized the growing global interest in women's cricket. Regionally, Venezuela has scheduled its highly anticipated presidential election for July the 28th, coinciding with the birthday of the late Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez, as announced by officials on Tuesday. The decision marks the commencement of a condensed campaign period, raising concerns about the involvement of the opposition's key candidates and international observers. President Nicolas Maduro is widely anticipated to seek re-election in the upcoming polls. Initially, his government engaged in negotiations regarding the election specifics with a faction of the opposition supported by the United States government. However, growing disparities between the two sides have emerged over the past 2 months, casting doubts on the electoral process's integrity and inclusivity. Well, that's news on the hour on WESN. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for watching.
Hi everyone, this is Wendy Fitzwilliam and I invite you to Woman Power, a wonderful show celebrating women on International Women's Day, March 8th at Napa. Won't you join me? So looking forward to seeing you there. Tons and tons of amazing, fabulous woman talent. Mwah.
I am the whole blinking market.
The countdown has started for the most entertaining ladies event ever. Get your tickets for Woman Power.
Who run the world, girls? Who run the world, girls?
Under the patron of Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, the network of NGOs is proud to invite you this Friday, March 8th, 7 p.m. at the luxurious Napa Auditorium. Enjoy powerful and talented divas like Nadia Batson, Bonnet Bickford, Carol Addison, Nisha B, the Xavier String, Kareen Ashe, and a special guest performance from Neval Chaitler. And the host of this esteemed event, the 1998 Miss Universe and still very beautiful Miss Wendy Fitzwilliam.
This girl is on fire.
Tickets for Woman Power this Friday at Napa are $300 reserved and $250 general admission. And they're getting scarce and getting scarce. For more information, call 678-7549 or 491-1802. This is Woman Power.
They go keep their money, I go keep my honey and die with my dignity.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being with us this morning. So we are sticking with the issue of national security. Professor Selwyn Cudjoe presented a 16-point crime plan, which he believes is necessary to tackle with the issue. He's also of the opinion that we should declare 2024 a year of crime, where we are pulling together all our resources, utilizing existing strategies while formulating strategies to deal with the situation. Professor Cudjoe joins me virtually this morning. Hello, sir. Welcome to AM Prime.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. I want to start with a quotation of yours. You said, and I quote, "Today we are faced with a crime situation that has gotten out of control. Murders, home invasions, robberies, and rapes. It is only our people acting collectively without thinking about our race or class, color, or social rank, but acting as sovereign beings who can solve this problem." That second part of the quote, "it is only our people acting collectively without thinking about race, class, color, social rank." Is racism a problem here in TNT that is affecting the way that we solve our crime and the criminal activity that is plaguing TNT as a whole? Is that a contributing factor?
Is the what? Racism?
Is race a contributing factor? Race, color, social rank a contributing factor to us not being able to deal with the crime situation?
Not necessarily. I don't think so.
So could you explain the quote then, please?
Well, I'm just saying my thinking about it is that right now we don't have a crime plan, or to the degree we have a crime plan, I'm not too sure the citizens are aware of it. And if you accept my proposition, that is probably the most important thing that affects the country, then it seems to me all of us must get together. I mean, regardless of, not because of, but regardless of our social status, and somebody who making lots of money and somebody who has nothing, we ought to come together. Those separations, whether you're Roman Catholic or Hindu, we've have to come together. My sense of things is that we are not, in other words, my sense is if you're going to solve the problem, each of us, Mr. Shah included, should know what his role is if it's a communal problem. If it's not a communal problem, you can do what you want. But to the degree that we recognize it's an important problem, not even important, I mean, I don't know if you see what's happening in Haiti right now. I don't even think the president could get home. I think his son was in Puerto Rico last night. I saw where these gangs burst into the jail and freed everybody. And so if you want to go that way, you have to decide that all of us at this point, can't let it get further, must come together. And more importantly for me is that each individual, each member of society, regardless of race, class, or color, must know what his or her role is within that struggle.
So whilst I understand that, and I agree with you in that respect, you are absolutely correct. We, as citizens, are not aware of any existing crime plan. We are told that a crime plan is in place. We are also told that the crime plan seems to be working where you are seeing reductions in serious crimes within certain respects. If we have no idea or a sense of direction as to where we are going, we know where we are, we're not entirely sure where we are going, is it that citizens now have to take the situation into their own hands?
Well, how do they do that? I mean, if you're talking about, I mean, that's why you have governments. I mean, there are things that individuals can do, and there are things that governments do. And when you have a situation like that, it behooves the government to tell us how we could do it together. So it's, I mean, yeah, people could just say if they see something, call someone and so on, but that's not a plan. That is simply a rhetoric, a rhetorical marker, if you want it. But I just think that we need to know. If you don't know, we can't do a thing about it. If you're going to play a game of soccer, you want all the members, you can't say you're going to play a game of soccer and you don't have the goalkeeper because he wants to take today off. You have to have everybody. So I think that it behooves the government. I don't think the government sees it as very urgent. I just saw they just named a constitutional committee, and I think the president, the prime minister, met conversations with the prime minister at Skiffle Bunch in San Fernando and says, we're not going to talk about crime. Well, how do you do that? I mean, it just seems to me that if that's the most important problem, and that's the elephant in the room, yeah, let's talk about it. And I remember about 20 years ago, there's a meeting we had with Mr. Mann and some of us, and he had this very glorious notion of making Port of Spain like, one of those Middle East countries. And I said to him, I said, right, that's all right, we've got the money to do that. But what about crime? And he said, crime would take care of itself. Well, crime hasn't taken care of itself. That's why we need to have a plan. And so you can't say you're going to meet citizens to talk about the problems of society, but let's not talk about crime. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that works. I think it's a central issue.
And do you think, are you of the opinion that the government is capable with dealing with the crime situation that we're facing?
Well, I don't want to simply put it on the government. I don't want to get in that thing that because the government has to do something, we as citizens hang around because we are the government, because we elect them. I think the government, if we said let's do it together, that we can at least move towards solving it. So yes, I think the government is capable if they were willing to do it.
Fair point. But then where do we start? And by the way, you made a very good point there. If the government is willing to do it. So where do we start? Where do we start?
Like I said, I go back again. I've given you I tell you where we start. I've given you 16 or whatever points. That's from asking me where do I start. That's where I would start. But I think
one of the points that you made is a national statement on crime, even citing in Jamaica the national consensus on crime. Is a national statement even make any sense at this point?
I don't know
past that.
I don't know what that means. It doesn't make any sense. I'm saying that the distinction, the difference, even though I don't think it's alleviated the crime so much in Jamaica, but at least there's a common consensus about 16 or 20 different organizations, including the Prime Minister's office, including the leader opposition, including civic organizations, who at least recognize our plan. So you could go to Jamaica, or you could go to or your email, not your email, you go to Google, and there is at least a sense that this is what we ought to be doing. So in that sense, and that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but you have to give it a shot. But I think that's, in terms of a consensus of crime, each person on each organization, even those on the left, those on the right, civic organization, police organizations, etc., at least know this is what we want to do. I don't think we have that. I think if you say, where do we start? I think that's where we should start. We should start at the point where we say, okay, all of us have a sense of what we are doing. I think that's what's probably lacking. And then we take it from there. Maybe success, I mean, I'll be successful. In this sense, I don't think in my statement emphasize the role of, say, United States in terms of the question of drugs coming in and what they can do. And maybe there has to be an external dimension. But as far as the internal dimension is that we have to have a statement.
And who should be responsible for such a statement?
I go back again. The government, the opposition, civic groups who should come together as a community. It's not an arbitrary thing. No one person has the answer to any of those problems. That's not how knowledge works. You don't have the power. Even you work at whatever your station is, you don't have all the answers. You depend on somebody to get the link going. It depends on somebody to tell you what time to come on the air. It's working together. That's how society works. No one person. So it might behoove the government, if you want to look at it that way, to do what the opposition is doing, which I think is a great point. They're getting together and saying, okay, let's have people talk about it. They don't have to be right, but there's a sense of a consciousness, an awareness that we have to come together. So I think in this context, it seems to me that the government ought to call together. We've had it in the past, but constitutional reform, for example, the Constitutional Committee, even with Sir Hugh Winning several years ago, we had a Republican Constitution and an Independence Constitution, that you went out and solicited views. In the committee, you had a commission of probably 10, 12 people, and they go to the various communities and solicit views. That's an initiative that should be taken or could be taken by the government because the government has those kinds of resources.
Mm-hmm. Professor Kujo, we've reached a point in respect to these discussions, even crime conversations between the opposition and the government, cannot seem to agree on having these discussions at all. There seems to be complete disagreement over having these discussions. And that leads to another point, a point at which you've raised as well, with the level of respectful listening that exists on either side. And that's also transcending into community. No one seems to want to listen to each other. So I give you credit for your plan. But it doesn't seem as though it could really happen given the current state of things.
I don't know it cannot happen. We have to take initiative, I just saw in the papers today, I think the Financial Times or the New York Times, that as far as the Republicans and the Democrats are on all of these problems, that they had to come with a budget, else the government would be turned off. As far right as, say, the Speaker is, Speaker Johnson is, and the people on the right, the Democrats and Republican, got together yesterday and say, okay, we must come together. It is people. It's people. I mean, it's not like there's some monolith, but they know that if they don't do it, the government could shut down. And would mean in terms they got to fire all the civil service, etc. So the urgency of the issue, even though many right-wing Republicans did not vote for the plan, members of the government, that is the Democratic Party, and the government and got together and said, because we have to have this bill, else we're gonna. So people have come together. No matter how far right you are, how left you are, it's a kind of logical thing that says, who are we hurting? Okay, I mean, who has to take the initiative? And that's where, again, respectful listening, but even a sense of one's own preservation as a citizen. I can't tell Mr. Mann and Mr. Rowdy, you got to join the talks, or you've got to take the initiative. You could scoff at the opposition as much as you want. That sounds good. You could curse them out. That sounds good. But unless somebody say, okay, let us get there. Okay, they have the 4 people that they said they have, and the Prime Minister insists that he will not be a part of it. Well, sometimes you have to make compromises. That's how elections or anything works. If you're married, you have a wife, you don't agree on everything, you have to make compromises. And somebody has to take the initiative, and that's the problem. Nobody will seem to understand that it died. That's why I said, if we call 224 or 2024 the year of crime, then all of our resources, all of our intelligence will go towards that. But meanwhile, people, only when it begins to hit, and that's why I say we got together in Jamaica, in say Haiti, which is where I think we're going, that you can't, people just go home and take it over. They shoot the governor, the president, the prime minister, it goes to that length. So somebody has to break the logjam. But I think as a necessary prerequisite, we have to listen to each other. We have to be respectful. I can't call you all kinds of nasty names and then say, okay, Mr. Shah, let's go have a drink. We got to say, on this point, I disagree with you. We may have fundamental disagreements, but it doesn't mean I don't like you, don't like me, just that we see it in different ways. And I think what sometimes the mistake we make sometimes, we sort of freeze those positions into a kind of absolutism. And I'm not going to move, and you're not going to move. And meanwhile, they say, while the elephants are fighting, and the grass is suffering, So we have to move off of that kind of rigidity and say, okay, how could we get together? And it takes intelligence to do that. I mean, this machismo and I'm always right and all, it doesn't really help anybody.
Professor Cujo, in your opinion, where do you see Trinidad and Tobago heading?
Towards Haiti. If we do not solve the crime problem, I think in 10 years we will be worse than Haiti. You see all the home invasions. 10 years ago, we didn't have all those home invasions. When I was growing up, we didn't have all those home invasions. We were a quiet society. I mean, we didn't knock over doors. Obviously, I'm much older than you are. But the fact is that you've seen the sometimes my mother used to say, why take a flambeau to look for something at night when you could see it in the day? We see it there. So where we're heading, my sense of it, and I may not live it, you may see it, is that we're heading towards becoming, and we see it every year. This is just common sense. The major crimes go up and up and up. You're scared to walk in the street. My mother was about 80 or 90, about 80, I don't want to exaggerate. And she'd go up to her cousin, her in-laws, it was about probably a mile, and she'd walk up there every night by herself. You can't do that. So you can see the deterioration. You don't want to close your eyes. But if you have any sense, you will see it. Home invasions, people being killed. You can't go up. I mean, I think the Prime Minister alluded to this. You can't go up to, say, Lavin and put up some, cameras to see what's going on. As they say, don't come into my area. Well, once you begin to have that, that's chaos. So that's what you're seeing. That's what you're seeing. And to get all nice and dressed up and say, I'm saying when that begins to happen, no one is safe. No one. They could have $1 million. I saw this guy. This guy was working with his telephone company. and I knew him very well. It was, I think he's worked for the bank. And last night it was a home invasion. He and his girlfriend, I think, in some place on Woodbrook was beaten up and so on. They're moving his house. I wouldn't think that's possible. However, right now the ministers and so on have protection because of their official capacity. Soon they'll be out of government. Soon they will not have that protection, and they would be exposed to the violence as everybody else. When violence starts, don't pick and say, "Oh, I'm not going to hit Mr. Shah or Mr. Kajil." Everybody is vulnerable. So if you ask me which one has gone, my sense of it, I may be wrong, and I'm trying to give the alarm, we are moving towards becoming another Haiti when law and order breaks down. Your problems. I don't know if you said, I probably read my statement. You remember I began with a grandson of a slave who in 1888 or something like that, or 1889, and made it very clear that the function of government is the security of its citizens. Well, if the grandson of a slave knows that, and you guys have been to college and high school and have degrees and have lots of money, don't know that, you're just fooling yourself. You're just fooling yourself, and I don't understand it. It's a kind of willful blindness, a sense of a refusal to see. And there's a big poem, which I know Mr. Rowley likes to, is called "No Longer Blinded by Our Eyes." No longer blinded. We must no longer be blinded by our own eyes. A refusal to see. There's a collective refusal to see. And if that is so, then you have to do something positive. You see, I must break that jam. I saw, for example, yesterday, a crime problem in New York. Holcomb, I think is the governor, called up the National Guard. The National Guard's not riding the trains, the subways. The National Guard, we say the police, the army can't come on. They don't play that. Hey, we have a problem. As of last night, I think the National Guard is riding the trains in New York because that's where the problem is. You know, sometimes, well, the National Guard coming is only for when there are floods and so on. No, we have a problem. The National Guards are riding the trains right now to prevent the surge of crime on the subways. That's what we mean by activity. If we don't do that, it gets out of hand. And you must nip it in the bud. We're just playing little games.
Well, Professor Kudrow, my final question to you, and again, I thank you very much for making the time. And yes, I did read your 16-point crime plan.
I'm thankful for that because some of the people in one or two people interviewed me and had not even read a word of that said, you know. But so I'm thankful for that, yes.
In that sense, does TNT, and if you are seeing, and you're not entirely wrong, I've heard this from others within the public domain as well, that they are of the opinion that TNT is heading down the road of Haiti. If that be the case now, and all that we're experiencing and seeing, do we need an iron fist behind us?
That's what when I talked about it, I mean, yes, that's what I meant, I think, on my sixth plan. The government has to say, the government has said, which is kind of incredible, we know that there are 200 or 300 leaders who are responsible. Now, if you know that 2 or 3 people who are responsible, not only do you have surveillance on them, you make sure we get them out in terms of whatever they're doing before it's done or whatever it's done, but you keep an eye on them. And that's what an iron fist might mean. I didn't use the term. I said strengthening whatever the 6th point is. But my point is, if you know that they're the troublemakers, I mean, what do you run and say, okay, do what you want to do? So I'm thinking that sense. Now, I think we're much too afraid of the constitutional violations of the Constitution. Well, there's a time when you say, okay, sit in, and I said it in the paper, as you would remember, there may be certain violations of civil and legal rights, but that is what might be necessary for a limited time. You've got to say, we're not going to have it. And 200 people or 300 people will not make this a living hell for us. And like I said before, you know, that when we were growing up in my little village called Tagarigua, if you're afraid to death, well, we're afraid to take you home. If you're not afraid to death, okay, you bad, big and bad. Well, we are the ones who have the obligation to be sure that the country is safe for others. And so your thing is to zoom in on those 300 people and be sure that they're contained at the very minimum. And for a time they get a attempt to strike, you arrest them. And it's simple. I mean, you have your eyes on them. If you live where you live, please, Mr. Shaw, where you live? Where do you live?
Where do I live? I live in Boston.
Oh God, Valsane, and they have the kind of home invasions is a hell of a thing. You put up your gates, I know. So you have to have, I mean, that's a good case of that's where you have to have your volunteers and or your army or whatever it is and says this is going to be a safe zone. They do it point by point. I mean, you know, you have you know what's coming.
You're speaking about home invasions and robberies. I got word yesterday, and I'm getting confirmation. More and more information is coming in that a 79-year-old lady who lived in a part of Alton, I don't reside there, indicated, I was told that she was found what seems to be murdered. She was tied behind her back, her home was ransacked.
Exactly the case. I mean, I'm at home. I mean, I'm retiring soon. I'll be living in Trinidad. I mean, I'll spend more time there. And I know that I'm going into a hellhole. Now, you could say don't come, but you have to. But that's the danger. At 89 or 79 and so on, you're not even safe. And you see it happen, and we say, okay, then I love the stories of them.
The police are investigating. The police are investigating.
Always investigating, but they solve 10% of the crimes. That's atrocious. So that's what I'm saying. You have to beef up the story and try to, get as close as possible to identifying who they are and trying to hit them before the strike.
Professor Kucho, I'd like to ask you just very quickly, more of a personal question.
Personal question, okay, go ahead.
No. It's in the sense that, I mean, you're absolutely right. We always seem to know these things. We know these 300 people. He was known to the police. He was a known gang leader. He was under investigation. We always seem to know those things. Those things always come out following an incident.
Yeah.
That being said, and given all that you have expressed yourself within your crime plan on the program this morning, even going down the road of Haiti, why would you return to Trinidad and Tobago if you have the opportunity to stay abroad?
I can stay abroad because Trinidad is my home. Trinidad is my home, and it's something that's not, what is home? A fellow called Sharma, who was a writer, he did a lot of interesting work, landscape and memory. And he said, home is landscape and memory. When you get up and you see the Northern Range, or you're ever going on a trip and you come back from your trip and you see the Northern Range as it rises in its majesty, you know you're home. And secondly, so it's landscape at one level and just memories, the people you grew up with, who you went to school with. And that's what home means. Some people say, I don't need it. A lot of people I know are my friends and even some family going to live in Florida and Atlanta and all that stuff. That's all right. But I'm from Trinidad, and more important, I'm from Tagarigua. It's a kind of, I don't know if you call it stupidity, but my life is fulfilled in landscape and memory. And yes, that's maybe silly, but and it's almost an existentialist demand. But I know that your whole existentialist sense of being is wrapped up in your landscape and wrapped up in your people. And, that's the ultimate, it's not a sacrifice, it's the ultimate decision. So I'm home very often, every once a month I'm home or something like that. But I'm talking about I'm going to be retiring from my job soon, and that's how I see it. It's been most of my time in Trinidad.
Well, Professor Kujo, I want to thank you very much. I know it's very early out there in Massachusetts, so I want to thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning. It has been a pleasure to have this conversation, sir.
Well, it's been my pleasure too. At one time I was scared we would get on with your link, but I'm pleased that we got on the link, and thanks for your very personable approach to the matter, and I'm more than happy that you've been able to read it. But get my book on crime. I think it's something on crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and read it. It's only about, I don't know, $20 or $100. And read it, because I have a number of essays there which demonstrates my concept. I think it's Crime and Something in Society in Trinidad. It's a small, tiny book. But it demonstrates the other aspects of cultural policy, the question of multiculturalism, all those issues. You probably should get a copy and read it. You get it, I think, at UWI Bookshop, or certainly paper-based in Port of Spain, probably close to where you are in terms of, look at your address, it's probably close to where you are. Paper-based, go to paper-based and buy, it's only $100. Go get it, take a look at it, where I elaborate on some of these points.
I will, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good one. All the best. Take care.
Thank you so very much, sir. Okay, bye now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Kujo joining me on AI Prime this morning, and I'm glad that we were able to have that conversation. So I will make that effort to go to a paper-based bookshop.
Go to paper-based and get the book, Mr. Shaw. You're a smart dude, man. You're a very smart guy. So
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for AM Prime this morning. Thank you very much to all my guests, and thank you very much to the guys in WSN who always make this possible. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a safe one. Have a productive one.
Thanks.
WESN.
Hi everyone, this is Wendy Fitzwilliam and I invite you to Woman Power, a wonderful show celebrating women on International Women's Day, March 8th at Napa. Won't you join me? So looking forward to seeing you there. Tons and tons of amazing, fabulous woman talent. Mwah.
I am the whole blinking market.
The countdown has started for the most entertaining ladies event ever. Get your tickets for Woman Power.
Who won the world, girls? Who won the world, girls?
Under the patron of Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, the network of NGOs is proud to invite you this Friday, March 8th, 7 p.m. at the luxurious Napa Auditorium. Enjoy powerful and talented divas like Nadia Batson, Bonnet Bickford, Carol Addison, Nisha B, the Xavier String, Kareen Ashe, and a special guest performance from Neval Chaitler. And the host of this esteemed event, the 1998 Miss Universe and still very beautiful Miss Wendy Fitzwilliam.
This girl is on fire.
Tickets for Woman Power this Friday at Napa are $300 reserved and $250 general admission. And they're getting scarce and getting scarce. For more information, call 678-7549 or 491-1802. This is Woman Power.
They go keep their money, I go keep my honey and die with my dignity.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.